Here's a big question. When do we quit selling to the people that aren't buying? All right, my friends. So we're back and we are 2 weeks away from completing our book club Friday on When They Say No from Richard Fenton and Andrew Waltz, the definitive guide for handling rejection in sales. And today is quite a day when we're coming to it might be a good time to quit. And let me ask you this before we get going on here. Have you ever asked yourself, should I continue prospecting this customer? Like, it's been X amount of time. Maybe you've sent X amount of quotes. Maybe you've had X amount of conversations and you're sitting there going, like, there's no movement. What do I do? And I could share from my perspective, and I'd love to hear from y'all if this is kind of what you guys feel. But I always felt when I hit that stage, it's like, but what if I was that, proverbial 3 feet from gold with this prospect, right? And it's like you hang on. It's like you're falling off the cliff and you grab a rope and your hands are sliding down the rope. So you tie this big knot in it to hang on, and you hang on to that prospect. You hang on to the idea that, will it close? Will it? And sometimes it just never does. I mean, there's been prospects for 3 years, 4 years, and they would change draft managers, or there's no room. And I know a lot of people in logistics are like, well, when it's a no, it doesn't mean never. So consistently go after them. I've spoken to a lot of people that have chased prospects for 4 years before they get the business. So I don't think it's as definitive as, you don't get business in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And we say no. I don't think it's definitive as a prospect says this is the timeline and the timeline changed, so we say no. But there is some interesting things in this book here that I actually want to go over with you. So I won't get into the big stories, but in essence, a former professional poker player and cognitive behavioral decision maker, Annie Duke, she reported this when she was profiled in Entrepreneur magazine. She said, in order to succeed, you're going to have to stick to hard things, but also to succeed, you're going to have to quit the things that aren't worth pursuing. And she actually wrote a book called Quit, and I'm going to look into it because I'd like to understand that a little bit more. But what they start talking about is when we're talking about the decision to quit, right? There's a couple of things that Andrea and Richard talk about that come before it, and I agree with it. One of them is, are we really looking to disqualify a prospect when we first connect with them? And let me explain it to you this way. So if you think about it like this, often we say, hey, we got to qualify our prospects, right? Because if they're not qualified for what we're doing, what our superpower is, what our company can perform at the highest levels of, then we're kind of at a disadvantage because they might be looking for something we can't offer, right? So we talk often about this qualifying. And what they're saying here is disqualify, which I think is an even better way to put it, is if you just disqualify people that don't match your ICP, then what are you left with? Obviously qualified people. So it's just another way to say it. And what Richard says here is like Andrea is in charge in their company. Andrea is in charge of all of the sales and marketing. So she actually calls up and she has 3 questions she asks. Each question is a yes or no question. So it goes back to kind of counterintuitive to what, or maybe not counterintuitive. It goes back to what we've been taught, like open-ended questions. Now, I think there's a difference between open-ended questions on your cold call and open-ended question on the discovery call. And I think there's 2 different things. And I guess I shouldn't even say cold call and discovery call. In your cold approach process and then discovery process, because we can actually get to discovery on the first call, right? But what he says is this. So what Andrea does is she's in charge of marketing in yours. She calls prospects to see if they may be interested in training materials or speaking services, right? So what her first series of questions to do, the first 3 questions, is designed to disqualify the prospect so she can move on to somebody that's qualified. And I think this approach is pretty much mandatory in our day and age, especially where we are in the industry. So, for example, what Andrea says, because Andrea and Richard, you got to understand their company, they're going in to give presentations to teach sales teams how to improve and all that. So the first question is, does your company have in-person or Zoom sales meetings? Now, if the company says no, we never do sales meetings, she doesn't go any further, because she goes in to say, why am I going to try and convince somebody that doesn't believe in doing sales meeting to do sales meetings? So she says, okay, thank you very much, and says no. So she just disqualified that prospect. And there's a couple of things with this. Okay. So I look at it and I say, okay, do you, if you're going in on your one channel approach and you're saying, okay, well, we do this area to this area, or this lane to this lane if you're an asset-based company, right? Do you deal with brokers? Are you looking for X, Y, and Z in order to help improve ABC? So those might be some of the initial questions I ask, right? You might ask, do you believe that your logistics supplier is a resource in your business to help you maintain profitability? That's another great question, because if they say no, and that's what you're focusing on for your client profile, they're disqualified. Now, and obviously everyone understand something here, okay? Some of you are probably at this point saying, but Dan, I'm a broker. I can do more than just one thing. And I agree. But if you've ever heard the expression, if you chase many rabbits, you'll get none. But if you chase one rabbit, you'll probably catch it. And so I look at that and I say, when I'm reaching out cold, what's the rabbit I want to chase? Do I want to chase a personality trait? Do I want to chase a desire? Do I want to chase an internal fortitude? Look, what do I want to chase? And I think we really need to come to grips with that first, because when we realize what we want to be quote unquote known for, or what our best foot forward is, right? Another perfect example. I have a real hard time working long term and providing tremendous value with companies that don't see us, the logistics professional, as a resource. And this is not an ego thing. It's just, I enjoy sending my customers material, information, data. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy having conversations with customers that truly want to build a logistics department, or build a logistics function, a supply chain that's going to help them be profitable. I want to work with customers that are going to let me be part of the construction, instead of saying, hey, do this, this, and this. And then we as logistics professionals say, you can come into I asked you to do it, you do it. And then all of a sudden problems hit, and there's all these whirlwinds that you could have solved. Like that, for me, keeps me engaged in working with the customer. It keeps me in my zone, my impact zone. So for me, I'll ask these questions and I'll actually walk away. And the next chapter in the book, they talk about, you shouldn't be surprised. And then the one after that, they talk about being surprised. And then one after that, they say, well, you shouldn't always walk away. And they go in and they talk about, your pond. So think of it like this, right? If you sell airplane engines, right? That's your field. There's only so many companies that buy airplane engines, right? So your field is very small compared to logistics. Our field is ginormous. So we don't necessarily have to follow, and I'm speaking specific to logistics now. I don't believe in my heart of hearts that we have to follow that. You can find 10,000 companies in almost every city to chase. Out of those 10,000, even if 1% match your client profile, right? 1%. That's what, 100 companies, I think, or something. I'm not that great at math without my calculator. But, you do that by all the states and all the provinces in North America, you got a really good customer base, even at 0.5%, right? You got a great customer base. And so for me, that pool is astronaut. It's like infinity and beyond. And so I don't believe that we have to work with people that we don't necessarily want to work with, that don't really match us. And here's the secondary part to that. Um, you're not doing them any favors either, because if in the end everybody's just going to switch out in a month or two's time, we're just wasting everybody's time. So sorry about that, kind of off track there. So that would be the first question. If the answer is yes, I do believe, then we move on to the second question. And Andrea says, do you hire speakers and trainers from outside your company? Now, what they say here is, see, she has no interest in investing time trying to convince somebody to change the way they operate. It's too consuming and usually very little likelihood of reward. So I bring this back to the prospect that has a list and says, well, I send a list out to X amount of people. And, if you get the right quote, you get on the list. And I often say to people, then clarify that, right? So if I get a couple of loads and you love what I'm doing, is there an opportunity for it not to be on the list? And if the answer comes back no, then you have to identify if that's even part of what you want, or do you just disqualify them, right? Do you call it quits and move on, right? And then Andrew goes into a third question. Do you have a training budget of at least X? Now, this is where it gets a little more, I'm going to say a little blurry, the way I see it anyways, in logistics, right? Is if you have the numbers to lanes, meaning so let's say you're an asset-based carrier, okay? So do you do ship from this point to this point? Yes. Okay, great. Are you interested in having a conversation or looking to see if a supplier can help you create that triangle with the customers that I have that will, obviously match up with your freight? So in the end, when the market turns, you don't have major rate hikes because we're already got it. You were not in the spot market. You're not dealing with, yes. Okay. Now, does $2,700 sound good to you on that lane? Oh no, we pay $2,000. Thank you very much. Have a great day. So you went through 2 layers, and then that third layer was, okay, thank you very much. I mean, I'm not, anyone that drops $700 on a rate, A, you're probably being too greedy in the beginning, and B, what does that do to your credibility, right? So for me, I look at it and I say, I'm actually going to change my approach, and I'll let you guys know what happens with it, but I'm going to go to a 3-tier approach, and I'm actually going to hit the 3 tiers in a sentence or two. To try and see if I can even increase my disqualifying time. No, it'd be increase. So yeah, no, decrease. Sorry. So instead of taking like a minute, can I get it done in 30 seconds? Can I get it done in 45 seconds? And then I take that by my 50, 60, 70 calls a day. And now all of a sudden I've saved a ton of time, right? So they go on to say, when this happens, it might be a blessing. And it was a long story. But only time will tell if it is a blessing. And I think that's right. I mean, I think when we look at it, or we start getting into the individual customers, like if you go through your pipeline right now, never mind your pipeline, if you go through your customer base right now, and you start saying to yourself, okay, like that customer, like that customer, like that customer, really don't like that customer, really don't like that customer. That customer wants filet mignon at dollar store prices and all that, right? And if you go back to the sale, I think you're going to realize that you're not surprised with the results. Like if you go back to the beginning, when you first started prospecting this person, I think you're going to realize that the signs were there, like the red flags were there. I think we all get red flags. I think a lot of the time as salespeople, we tend not to listen to the red flags because we see the volume or we think the commission or whatever, but there's huge red flags, right? So it says, they talk about, when they said you shouldn't be surprised, they talk about Zig Ziglar. Every sale has 5 fundamental hurdles that need to be jumped. No need, no money, no hurry, no desire, no trust. So I look at it and I say, no need. Do they really need another supplier right now? Okay, so that's where I see it being a no, being not now. Because maybe they don't need it now, but when the market turns, do they need it? No money. Are we too expensive? Right? No hurry. No issue with the capacity right now. Right? We're facing all of these right now. And these are common objectives that you hear, right? No desire to use any of my time and energy to switch, right? So no desire for the product and no trust. I know the people that I have in my system now. I don't know you. See, these all five actually pertain really well to our market at this present time. The question is, no need at the moment, too expensive at the moment, no hurry, no issue with capacity at the moment, no desire to use time and energy to switch at the moment, or no trust because we haven't built it yet. So those are your five key frames that you should be actually looking at, right? So they go into other things. We're happy with our present supplier, and they teach. This is actually one really good thing. I often do it with a story log. I often do it with a rebuttal log, but an objective log, objection log. That was a difficult one on a Friday morning. So they go into like, we are happy with our present supplier. Your widget won't work with my widget. We have no money to invest right now. I heard bad things about your company. I don't want to get locked into a contract. We only work with vendors we know. We can switch that to we only work with asset base, or we only work with brokers. I've had bad experiences with brokers or people from Canada or whatever. I get a cheaper model from your competitor. I'm dealing with one of your competitors and they're giving it to me cheaper. I need to talk to my boss, team lead, before I decide. I'm not ready. It's not a priority. So I highlighted 4 of these. We're not happy with our present supplier. We only work with X. I've had bad experiences with XYZ, and I'm not ready. It's not a priority. So for me, those are kind of the 4 that any sales rep right now should be prepared to answer. And I think when you say prepared to answer, just really understand, like, what would you say if somebody says right now, we're happy with our present supplier? And for me, the one big thing that I've always said when they said that is I said, you know what, if you can, like, I'm a huge learner. I love learning. What is it your present supplier does so well that you don't even want to hear another option that's out there? See, to me, that's a great way to come back from that objection. So, and here's the thing is, I am very interested in what it is that makes that supplier good. Because if I can glean a little bit of that gold, I can figure out a way to implement it with my present customers. And if I implement with my present customers, am I going to help them out more? Is it going to add to my overall ability to serve that client? See, this is the big thing. This is where we don't necessarily dive into. So we only work with asset-based companies. That's very interesting. I'm hearing a lot more about that. If you wouldn't mind sharing with me, why is it that you only deal with that? Was it like a bad experience and I let the prospect share? And I'm figuring out why. Now, if I'm a broker and their mandate is they only deal with asset carriers, as soon as I get the answer, I'm going to end the call, because I'm not going to try and convince somebody that has a corporate mandate to only deal with asset-based carriers. But you see, this is why I asked the question. So if the person says, well, I only deal with asset-based carriers, I'm like, that's interesting. I'm hearing that a lot more lately. Why? Like, is there something that happened at your company, or is there a performance thing that you feel an asset side would be more beneficial than a brokerage side? Now, I'm just asking that question to gain insight and knowledge for myself. I am not going to try and convince this person to switch their process in the company. It takes too long and it's not profitable. Right? So that would be a disqualifying question. When they say, I've had a bad experience with brokers, right? How many of us have heard that in sales all the time, right? Really, if you wouldn't mind sharing, because, obviously there's a lot of people in the industry, in every industry, that make it look bad. I mean, look, and a perfect example I always use is, you look at used car salesmen. They've, for centuries, from as long as I can remember anyways, they've had a bad rep. But you know what? I've bought some pretty awesome used cars. Want to share? And you never know. A bad experience doesn't necessarily mean they will not use people. They just had a bad experience. So how do you prove you can ever overcome those bad experiences? Yes, you're absolutely right. I know what you're thinking. Reference letters, right? Big time. That's a great rebuttal. I'm not ready. It's not a priority. To me, this is when I think we're going to get more and more, especially in the first quarter of 2024, where we're in there now, because volumes are slow. Most companies are having a struggle keeping up with just making their present suppliers happy. So why are they going to take time out of their day to set you up when it's not a priority? See, this to me is one of the biggest ones, because I have seen this over and over and over and over again. Like, if you don't really understand what your superpower is coming into this, why would anyone make it a priority to set you up? So it's something for you to think about as to, how do I move through this with the ability to show my superpower, but not only that, how do I make it a priority for my prospect to set me up so we can actually start showing them the value we have, right? Then they go into, you should be surprised, right? So this talks about, okay, so if you qualify them, they have everything you want. You agree that what you offer is ability for them. As a result, you're 100% certain. Then you ask for the sale, and they say no. You should be surprised. But he says here, based on everything you've told us, so here's the rebuttal is when it's no. But when this happens, we respond as follows. Wow, we're surprised. Based on everything we've talked about, it seems we're a perfect fit. Can you please ask why you said no? And they actually make this it puts a prospect in a position to explain themselves, which very well may lead them to a yes. At a minimum, it exposes a true objection. See, and I think this is where, as salespeople, we sometimes forget that during the conversation, we might have missed something. Maybe we weren't listening intently. Maybe we misunderstood what the prospect was saying, which led us to an observation, a perspective that isn't in their focus. So we go through it and they're like, yeah, everything great, but no, because my real objection is ABC. So to ask that and expose your real objection, I think now you're actually starting the process of selling. This is where it starts. Then they go on and say, one of Andrea's most common things that I talk about, that she talks about when she's on the show, is next. Some will, some won't. So what? Next. Who's next? Who's next? And that's where we're going to end today. But it was, when we talk about that next, again, it's consistently sanitizing your pipeline, so you consistently have the highest ranked prospects in your pipeline. Now, that might mean you need twice as many leads in half the time, because you're disqualifying faster. And the faster you disqualify, I believe anyways, the faster you get to the people that are right for you and them, right? I've said it a million times. It's like any party you go to. You're going to connect with some people. You're not going to with others. You're going to meet people. You're going to get along. You're going to have similar interests, maybe similar music, like similar this, similar that. Some people you're going to meet, you're going to have a lot of things, similarities, and then other things you're going to be completely on opposite sides about. And that's normal. But the more similarities we have, the more we are congruent with our prospects, the better opportunity we have to actually make a sale and actually start serving that prospect. So I hope you enjoyed this. Next week, we're going to be finishing off this book. And then the week after that, so next week we're the 12th today. So we're the 19th. So on the 26th, we're actually going to have Andrea and Richard on the show to discuss some questions that I've written down in the book. And hopefully that'll help you guys. So in turn, go out there, make every call educational. And my friends, go out and crush your sales. We'll see you later.